Welcome to a little mini-series we're doing on the robot operating system, which is a Linux-based series of libraries and tools designed to help you with robotic applications and building and getting your robots up and running. Specifically in this series, we're going to focus on getting a drone to operate within a VICON system, and inside the VICON system, it's going to do a SLAM, which is like your localization and mapping algorithm. And we're going to do that to create a 3D point cloud of the space. In this tutorial, we're initially going to look at the ROS tutorials and just try to make clear some of the concepts which might be a little bit vague. And then in the next video, we'll look at setting up VICON, and in the following videos, we'll go into the SLAM and all that. And we're going to go from start to finish. So this tutorial here assumes you've at minimum read these ROS tutorials, which you can find on the ROS website, which is at the wiki.ros.org/ros/tutorials. I'll put a link up here, but you can just Google robot operating system and it'll pop right up. So the intermediate ones you don't really have to worry about, but as long as you've done all these beginner level tutorials, you'll be in good stead to work with what we have here. In the following tutorials, we'll give you the VICON code you need and show you how to edit it for your own system and how you can expand that for multiple drones and things like that. So what I thought I'd do is, assuming you've read these tutorials, I might go through some of the concepts which I know were a bit confusing to me after I'd finished. So initially we're going to go into this creating a ROS package section. And what you'll first notice here is at the top of these tutorials, you'll have Catkin and ROS build. And if you click them, it'll change the tutorial that it presents you. And the idea here is you have two sort of systems running within ROS. So all your packages can be built either using Catkin or ROS build. And if you can try to get away with it, try not to mix them up. It'll make things easier for you, especially if you are a beginner. And so all of our packages we're going to provide you later on are all built in Catkin. So that's the one you really want to focus on here. And you'll notice when you're in ROS, if you follow these tutorials through, you'll create your package, and then Catkin make is the system you use here rather than ROS build. And it's just how all the packages are managed. So that's the first point of confusion that I ran into. I didn't realize there was two different systems initially just looking at it. So the next thing I thought I might cover is the ROS nodes, the topics, the services and the parameters, and sort of what's going on there. See, the idea is in our ROS packages, you can kind of, as an abstraction, think of them as your applications running. So for instance, I'm going to give you a ROS VICON package that I've written. So once we have a ROS package, within that package are our ROS nodes. And those are the executables which we can run. So there can be multiple nodes within a package. And in the next tutorial, when we actually load up the VICON one and we go through the initials of the system outside these tutorials, I'll make it quite explicit, selection of that and where they're all located within the files. So how can we use these nodes? Our VICON system in the next tutorial will have a C++ program running on your computer, which will push out the VICON data in a package that you define. And we're going to show you how to define that package. So what you'll have is this ROS node, which we'll give you is written in C++, and it's just going to look at that package and it's going to break down all the information. And then once it has that information that we want, what we're going to do is we're then going to publish it on a ROS topic. And topics are the way our individual nodes communicate with each other. So what we have is a system where if one node publishes data to a topic, another node, which is completely independent of the first, can then subscribe to that same topic and pull the information from it. So the next tutorial will have a system where we have a VICON node publishing data to a topic, and then we'll have the drone, let's say control node, that will be subscribing to that topic and then pulling the information so it can then act on it, because what's the point of having real-time position data if we don't act on it? How this information is passed is using messages. And there's a good selection of tutorials just here on creating messages and servers. But we're going to go into that a bit more in the VICON tutorial, just because we've defined our own messages for that. And it'll make it much more clear actually seeing one. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to cover is in your initial ROS installation. One thing you'll notice here is you've got multiple platforms. And if you're not a complete beginner, this is going to be quite obvious to you. But if you are, then this might come in handy later on. So with your platforms, Ubuntu is typically the one you pick if you're running ROS on a desktop. So you might have, for instance, a laptop or something connected straight into a robot, or you might have it driving an Arduino, which is driving your robot, or something like that. Now, the ARM build is typically the one you'll put on an embedded computer within your robot. So, for instance, on the drone that we'll be using later on, it has a Pixhawk flight controller in the drone, but talking to that Pixhawk is a little Odroid computer, which is like a beefed up Raspberry Pi kind of. And if you were using a Raspberry Pi, you'd use the same build. Now, it's important to make the distinction between the two because the packages you'll have available to you are different between the two. And for different distributions, so for instance, if we go into the Ubuntu ARM distribution here, you'll notice for Linux, if you've got 14.04 installed on your system, you'll have access to all the packages via the installer system. But if you're using 15 point anything, you won't be able to use the sudo apt-get install isn't going to find them for the 15. It'll only work for the 14. And I think they give you a warning up the top here. They do, due to limited resource. There's only active builds for Trusty. So that's kind of important. You can still manually install them, but it's a pain in the butt. And that leads us to the next thing. If you're looking to install packages, you can find them using this line here, and it tells you that in their install guide. But this is kind of neat. It'll give you a list of all the packages in your distribution, and then using this apt-get install, you can install them like this. So this is here is being used to install the base, but for instance, in the next tutorial, when we're setting up for the VICON and setting up the drone, you're also going to want to install MavROS and MavLink, which are how the drone communicates to the onboard computer. Not important for this, but this is the way you want to install them. It's going to make your workspace a lot tidier, and you'll also be able to use neat things like ROSDEP here, which is a system they've got in place where you can automatically install all the dependencies for a package. The final thing we're going to touch on is the difference between the installations. Although these tutorials we've shown here are for ROS Jade, there's also ROS Indigo, and for our future tutorials, it's not going to matter which one you install. If you go back further than that to things like Hydro, you're going to start running into incompatibilities and things will be different. But I'd say if you're just getting started and you're looking, Jade's a good bet to go and keep your Linux at about 14 point whatever. As long as it's trusty, you'll be fine. And that's mostly for the ARMs. The Ubuntu, I don't think it really matters actually on the desktop platform. It's just the ARM libraries that aren't quite as up to date. So I've just jumped across here to a page, and they've got this page here, robots using ROS. If you're a total beginner, these are robots you can buy off the shelf, things like that. I'm currently running ROS on one of these Pioneer robots, the P3AT. We've also got it running on a Seeker Junior, and they've got things like robotic arms and drones here. So they're usually, I'll go up to the Pioneer here. Great little tutorials on pretty much getting started, what you need to install and things like that. They're not always that fleshed out. If you're a total beginner, they might be a bit confusing, but if there's any demand for it, we can go through sort of setting it up on a few other platforms as well. We've got a bunch of robots we can try out. Cool. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching. The next tutorial, we're going to look at a setup workspace at the end of those tutorials, or we can set one up, and we're going to set up the VICON package. So we're going to install it. I'll provide a copy of it, and I'm going to show how the messages work, how we can modify it for different drones, and how it might be useful to you.